From our perspective, we think we are the premier global organization, and greatest wrestlers in the world want to be in the greatest platform. So we have a lot of confidence in our ability to manage that.
I am now a full-time member of the AEW roster.
There are a lot of really great people under contract at WCW, but you just don't need that many people under contract, especially.
This is the same thing that's going on with WWE right now, though. They're signing everybody, and they can't use everybody.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Wrestlenomics Radio. I'm Brandon Thurston, and I've been joined by no one again this week. I'm here all by myself doing another monologue on the professional wrestling business. I think this is the only podcast, the only form of media anywhere in the world other than articles published by myself, maybe, that focus pretty much exclusively on the wrestling business, on the economics of professional wrestling. And you may be listening to this in audio form only, in the traditional Wrestlenomics podcast feed. You may be listening and watching this on YouTube, because I'm going to get into some spreadsheets today, and I'm going to go over WWE's other media segments. And I think it's really helpful. I found that it's really helpful over the last few years of doing this stuff and sharing it with people. Is that you can not just read numbers and talk about numbers in an audio form in a straightforward text, but you can give some visual representation that go along with it. Or at least in this case, when we talk about spreadsheets, it'd be nice maybe if I could actually show them to you, so it's a little bit easier to follow, especially in the case of this one topic I'm going to talk about today, which is we're trying to unpack WWE's other media segment, which includes home entertainment, WWE Studios, and Mixed Match Challenge money, reality TV show money, and all the big money that WWE is getting from Saudi Arabia for those big live events there, and also in the most recent quarter, Q4 2018, the money that WWE got for Super Showdown in Australia. So if you're watching this on YouTube right now, you see a giant Wrestlenomics radio logo, I think, hopefully, and I'm going to take that away now, and we're going to go into the Google spreadsheet. I'll try to explain just exactly what's happening in as concise way as possible without being too boring here. But let's see. So WWE has this segment now that they call within their media division, right? So WWE is broken down, its revenue streams. They break them down into three major divisions, which let's see if I can look at one that is more current here. They have three major divisions, which they have are media, live events, and consumer products, which actually in this older version, we can just look at this older version. They have media, they have live events, and they have consumer products. So media is made up of, and still, this is an older one, but it's still, all these segments are pretty much still there. And this gives a little bit more detail because now they've sort of slammed all these divisions together, and to some degree, we don't have as much detail as we used to. So media includes pay-per-view, it includes the W Network. It used to include video on demand when that was a more relevant piece of their business. It includes all the money they get from television, which is their biggest piece of revenue. Home entertainment, which is basically their DVD business. Digital media, which used to be defined as things like W.com and YouTube revenue. That one has been one of the segments that has been sort of renamed as advertising and sponsorship. But anyway, of course, we have the live events business, which is basically just ticket sales and some travel packages that go along with it. The consumer products division, which is licensing, which are things like video games, toys, action figures. Also, the mobile games, I believe, are also in licensing. Venue merchandise, obviously, that's the merchandise that's sold at the venues, at W shows themselves. Then there's W Shop, which is the merchandise that's sold online. And they used to break out as a totally separate division, W Studios, but that has since been included into an other segment within the media division. So starting in 2018, we're looking at a trending schedule here on YouTube right now. So starting in 2018, they sort of reconfigured how they display this in their trending schedules and in all their SEC filings. So that now, if I pull up the current trending schedule, the most recent publication of their trending schedules on the WWE corporate website, which is one of my favorite websites to visit, we'll look at it and see if you go into the revenue page. Now, under media, we just have the network, which includes pay-per-view. We have core content rights fees, which are TV rights fees related only to Raw and SmackDown. Advertising and sponsorship, which I believe only refers to YouTube revenue and W.com revenue. I believe, and we can get into looking at what exactly the definitions are. And then other, which there's a footnote on other, which reads, other forms of media monetization reflect revenues earned from the distribution of other content, including but not limited to scripted, reality, and other in-ring programming, as well as theatrical and direct-to-home video releases. So I've got this spreadsheet here, Google Sheet, and I believe I've linked this on Twitter. So it shouldn't be too hard to find if you want to look at it for yourself. Because I made some tweets. I've tweeted a screenshot of this spreadsheet itself. So the other segment now includes W Studios, home entertainment, reality TV rights fees, mixed match challenge, the Saudi Arabia events, and the one so far Australia event. So my big question though was when I sat, what reason why I sat down to try to unpack this segment and to see how much money, how much of the other media segment made up what, was because I wanted to know, of course, how much money W was getting from Saudi Arabia. I believe Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio some months ago said that it's a 10-year deal worth, and I've got a column graph here to illustrate just how much money this thing is worth over on an annual basis. So I think it's $450 million over 10 years, Meltzer reported. And if that's the case, then you look at that in comparison to WWE's other big business deals. You look at the new deal that's going to come into effect at the end of this year, just for Raw with NBC Universal to air it on the USA Network, is worth an average of $240 million on an average annual basis. This is estimated sort of based on reports and whatnot. The SmackDown deal on an average annual basis, $205 million. WWE's second and third biggest TV deals in India, $34 million a year. In the UK, $33 million a year. And they'll probably get upgrades in India and in the UK whenever those new deals are announced. And then you got $7.5 million on an annual basis for the Canadian TV deal. And so you put that into context, this Saudi Arabia deal is bigger than their second and third biggest TV deals. Just to give you an idea of, this is not a small money situation. And Saudi Arabia making this deal with WWE is not just a matter of kind of like it is in other live event situations where WWE goes to the international markets and runs shows. Yes, there may be a local promoter involved, but it's not just a matter of WWE deciding that, Saudi Arabia would be a good market to run in and they could sell some tickets there. This is the government making a deal to pay them really well to do what we might call bought shows. So basically these are the biggest bought shows in the history of professional wrestling. Which, if this report by Dave Meltzer was correct, is worth $45 million a year. Now, I've got some data that I'm going to show that, at least in 2018, certainly was worth more than $45 million in the year, by my estimation. So I know, because of the training schedule that I showed, I know what the values were in revenue for W Studios and W Home Entertainment for each quarter in 2016 and 17, and those are entered here in black. And those are reported by W itself. And I also know, because W sort of retroactively reported what the revenue totals were for the other segment, I know what those numbers are as well. So those are also up here reported in black. So because W Studios and W Home Entertainment are just two pieces among, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces of the other segment, what I've done is I've taken the other total that has been published by WWE. I subtracted the W Studios and W Home Entertainment numbers that have been published by WWE and got an idea of like how much money is remaining, how much money is unaccounted for in this new configuration, this new way of reporting WWE revenue numbers. So what you find in 2016 Q1 is that there's $8 million left over. Okay, and in Q1 2016, there was no Mixed Match Challenge yet. There was no Saudi Arabia event. There was no Australia event. And that will be the case all the way from 2016 Q1 all the way through the end of 2017. So what we know about the entire years of 2016 and 2017 is basically this remainder number, unless there's something really unexpected and there's something I'm just not getting here, I'm really overlooking, then we know that these numbers, these remaining dollar amounts of in Q1 2016, 8 million, Q2 2016, 2.6 million, and so on. I'm not going to read the numbers off, but if you want to look at the spreadsheet, you can. If you want to see the screenshot on my Twitter, you can. We can see how much money is left over, and I think that pretty much tells you this was how much money below belongs to reality TV show rights in those given quarters. So a total of, in 2016, we can see the sum here in the corner, $21 million in 2016 would belong to reality TV show rights in my estimation. In 2017, if we total that up, another $21.7 million. So that's 21 and 21.7. Okay, and I've gone down here and I've counted up the number of episodes within each quarter that aired for Total Divas. So, like, for example, in Q1 2016, there were 11 episodes of Total Divas. The following quarter, 3 episodes. The following quarter, there were no reality TV show episodes aired. In Q4 2016, there were 6 episodes of Total Divas and 6 episodes of Total Bellas. So Total Bellas debuting at the end of 2016. And as we go on here, I've counted them up in 2017 for Total Divas and Total Bellas. And then, of course, in 2018, Ms. and Mrs. Debuted. So before we get too far ahead of myself here, so the real guesswork and calculations come in when we start to look at 2018, which we don't have WWE self-reported, at least not directly self-reported figures for WWE Studios and home entertainment. So what I'm really doing here is a lot of algebra, right? Like you probably thought when you graduated from high school that you would never use algebra again, but here I am using algebra and Microsoft Excel here to learn things about the wrestling industry, hopefully. So what I learned by going back, not just by looking at the trending schedules, but by looking at WWE quarterly reports and the annual report, was that I know pretty much for sure that WWE made $6.7 million in revenue from WWE Studios. Why do I know that? Because, let's see, I've got it noted in this cell here, because in the 10K, which is the annual report for 2018, it says this. These increases, and it's referring to the increases in the WWE, I believe, media division. These increases were offset by an $11.9 million decline in WWE Studios revenues, reflective of both the timing of our film releases and the performance of our released films. So it's saying that there was an $11.9 million decline in 2018 for WWE Studios compared to the prior year. So what I did was, if you total the WWE Studios revenues for 2017, you get a number of $18.6 million. So if you subtract $11.9 million from that, you get $6.7 million for the full year of 2018. Now, let's see. If I go into Q3, the Q3 quarterly report, it says here, it said in the quarterly report itself, these increases were partially offset by a $2.5 million decline in WWE Studios revenues. So I know that there was $2.5 million in Q3 2018 less than 2017 Q3. So 4.2 minus 2.5 leaves us with 1.7. And it just so turns out, just so happens that if you take the $6.7 million that you know is in the full year of 2018 for WWE Studios, you subtract 1.7, and then you divide the remainder of that across the 3 remaining quarters that are unknown to you. You get basically $1.7 million for each one, so that you do get a total of $6.7 million. So I think this is a pretty safe. There's maybe some margin of error here. These, it's not necessarily 1.7 in each of these lighter orange cells here. It may be a little less, a little more. Now, when I'm talking about, I'm trying to get an idea of how much money WWE made from Saudi Arabia. I think being off by a few million doesn't dramatically change the story, but there will be a margin of error here within a few, within 5 to 15 million maybe. As we go on, I'll try to be more accurate about this. So W Home Entertainment, I just took a guess that because the other segment is taking some of these revenue streams and just shoving them in so that W no longer needs to report on them, I figured maybe home entertainment was going to continue to decline. So I just took let's see, on the rate of decline from 2017 to 2018, it's a negative 33 growth rate. I applied that across the 4 quarters for 2018. So these are the numbers that I'm throwing in there. I'm giving home entertainment some money here. Again, these are just estimates. So then the guess would be, here's Q1 with $5.7 million remaining. Q2 with $57 million remaining, because of course that one includes the Greatest Royal Rumble event, and $8.5 million in Q3, $61.3 million in Q4, and that of course includes Crown Jewel and Super Showdown. So because of the estimates that I made in 2016 and 17, we get an idea of just how much money each of the reality TV shows are worth. And so if you can see down here in this very bottom row, what it turns out, if you divide the number of episodes by the number of unaccounted for revenue, which I think must belong to reality TV, then you get a range of about $650,000 to $920,000 per episode of reality TV. And so I use those numbers to calculate, let's see, $900,000 in Q1 across 5 episodes of Total Divas. I guessed about $4.5 million in Q2, 6 episodes of Total Divas, or excuse me, Total Bellas, times $650,000, estimated to be worth, let's see, $3.9 million in Q3. We've got 2 episodes of Total Divas, 4 episodes of Total Bellas, and 6 episodes of Ms. and Mrs. If it's an average of $690,000 per episode, that gives us $8.3 million. And then in Q4, we've got 8 episodes of Total Divas. If those are worth $900,000 each, then that gives us, let's see, $7.2 million. So you take that money away from this number here that was remaining, and to try to get an idea of what was left for Mixed Match Challenge and for any Saudi Arabia or Australian event. So Q1, you've got $1.2 million left. There were no Saudi Arabia event. There was no Australia event. So I figured that roughly $1.2 million that I've got left estimated, well, maybe that's due to 11 episodes of Mixed Match Challenge within that quarter. That would mean Mixed Match Challenge is worth about $100,000 per episode. Now, I showed that to somebody who looks closely at W stock, and they told me that they think that estimate is way too high. Maybe it's only worth $10,000 per episode. So, but this is the amount of money that I was left with. It's very well possible that the fees that W is getting for its reality programming on the E Network and on the USA Network, in the case of Ms. and Mrs., is escalating. And these numbers are really just estimates based on what I was able to calculate in prior quarters. So this number of $900,000 per episode could be too low. Nonetheless, so there's 11 episodes in Q1, and if this is correct, about $100,000 per episode for Mixed Match Challenge, and we carry that through to the 1 episode of Mixed Match Challenge in Q2, then you've got another $100,000 accounted for in Q2 off of $53.1 million. That leaves you with $53 million left for. I can't think of anything that it would belong to other than Saudi Arabia Greatest Royal Rumble money. Now, you can look at this and say, well, maybe home entertainment is too low. I can't see home entertainment being too much lower than the $1.9 million I've got here. Reality TV could be a little bit higher. So this could be a few million too high. I don't think it's more than like 10 million too high. So we're still in this estimate of like, $40 to $50 million, maybe more than $50 million for the Greatest Royal Rumble. Now it's possible that, and again, you keep in mind, Meltzer reported, where is our column graph that shows Meltzer reported that this is a 10-year deal worth $450 million. We already seem to be at least equaling that, if not exceeding that here, just with the Greatest Royal Rumble. Now, it's possible that the Greatest Royal Rumble, being the first event of this 10-year deal with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, had some sort of initial sign-on bonus or some sort of upfront bonus. So maybe the first year will just be bigger than the rest, and that's something to watch for as we go forward, studying closely WWE business. Now, of course, there's going to be Crown Jewel, which we'll talk about in a minute, which came up in Q4 because that happened on November 2nd. So in Q3, we've got $200,000 left over, and there were 2 episodes of Mixed Match Challenge, and that seems to work out consistently with what I was able to estimate Mixed Match Challenge being worth. Again, somebody else thinks it's worth only $10,000, and they could be right, but this seems to make sense mathematically. $200,000 left for two episodes of Mixed Match Challenge, worth an average of $100,000 or $110,000 per episode. So Had to have some seltzer there. So in Q4, I got $7.2 million left for reality TV. If you subtract that out of the total of $63.5 million and take my estimate of W Studios out of it, take my estimate of home entertainment out of it, we're left with $54.1 million. And there was no mixed match challenge. Yes, there was. Yes, there were 11 episodes of mixed match challenge in there. If those are worth about $110,000 per episode, that means you've got $1.2 million left for mixed match challenge. And you've got a grand total of $52.9 million left to split up in some unknown portion between Australia's Super Showdown and Saudi Arabia's Crown Jewel. Now, let's see. I think it's hard to say just what the split might have been like. So the first thing I did was to try to understand, well, how much money was the Australia Super Showdown worth? So I found a seating chart, and I found some ticket prices for the Australia event, and I did some basically some eyeball estimates on the prices and on the number of seats that were out there. So I took all these Australian ticket prices and I converted them to US dollars. I gave myself an idea of what each ticket price category made up as a percentage of the total seating capacity. I took the Observer's report of 62,000 tickets being people being in attendance. WWE made an announcement of something like 70,000 some odd, whatever. So let's be generous to the idea that maybe the Saudi Arabia deal wasn't worth that much, and so let's be generous and say, well, maybe there were let's say there were 62,000 sold at the Super Showdown. So we get all these numbers for the number of tickets sold in each section, multiply them by their respective ticket price, and we get a total gate of $25 million based on those estimates. And again, I'm being generous to the idea that maybe there were a lot of tickets for this event sold, just to be generous to the idea that maybe WWE didn't make that much money from Saudi Arabia. But there's still a lot of unknown here because we don't know just what the terms of the deal were between the local promoter in Australia, which was TEG. Could have been a 50-50 split. It could have been something much more complicated than that. But if it was, let's say, $25 million, and you took $25 million, I don't know, and split that in half, you've got $12.5 million for both each the local promoter and WWE. You're still left with, what is that? Let's see. If I get the Microsoft calculator out here and take $52.9 million and subtract out $12.5 million, you're left with $40 million, an additional $40 million to be attributed to the Crown Jewel event. And again, that's just a speculation. I wouldn't assert anything with a lot of certainty just how this money breaks down, other than to say I've got almost $53 million left here that I can't account for in any other way than to say they are the value of Crown Jewel and Super Showdown combined. So all of those numbers, all of that stuff, and all that Google spreadsheet stuff that we just went through, and I think the big takeaways that I learned from this was the value of a few of these media properties. So it would be this: reality TV is worth somewhere between $650,000 and $920,000 per episode, maybe a little bit more if those rights are escalating. It's really hard to unpack just what the value would be for Ms. and Mrs. and what the differences in the values are between Total Divas and Total Bellas. I did look at reality TV show viewership and found that Total Bellas is now exceeding Total Divas in terms of viewership. Ms. and Mrs. is doing better than either of them because they get the lead in from Raw. So yeah, so almost $1 million for some of these reality TV show episodes. The math tells me that Mixed Match Challenge, $100,000. And Crown Jewel, about $50 million, maybe more. And Australia and Saudi Arabia in Q4, again, that's Crown Jewel and Super Showdown combined, $53 million. So I would think, maybe this first year of this Kingdom of Saudi Arabia event was front loaded. And I'm going to pull up this column graph again that just shows the value of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia deal worth reported by The Observer, reported on, I believe, Wrestling Observer Radio by Dave Meltzer, $45 million a year, at least in 2018. It certainly seems to be exceeding that. So I think that's all I needed to say about W's other media segment. And I just wanted to bring up something that I didn't talk about the last time I recorded here, where George Barrios was actually asked on the W conference call about another wrestling promotion that is out there, and whether that would, how that would affect WWE, whether that be for talent or what have you.
And then, you mentioned investing in your talent base in 2019. We've seen in recent months a new wrestling promotion announced. Just wondering how this is potentially impacting the market for talent, and whether you're seeing more cost inflation there than normal. Thanks.
Yeah, too early to tell. We wouldn't talk about the specifics of that. From our perspective, we think we are the premier global organization, and greatest wrestlers in the world want to be in the greatest platform. So we have a lot of confidence in our ability to manage that.
Okay, thanks.
So that was, I believe, David.
We'll take our next question from Brandon Ross.
So that was, I believe, David Karnovsky on the conference call, one of the financial analysts, asking George Barrios. WWE, this is basically in line with everything that WWE has said over the last several years. They don't like to acknowledge any other wrestling company as competition. They like to think of any other form of entertainment as competition. And actually, George Barrios, later in the day, last week, Thursday, was on CNBC just after their financial reporting came out. He was on the closing bell, and we will attempt to play that now.
Sort of differentiator, I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, is the content. I mean, do you have any direct competitors?
Well, in our world, which is entertaining people, everything that puts a smile on someone's face or gets their attention is a competitor. And I would say the best thing I ever heard was Reed Hastings describing competition. And he said, sleep is competition.
Now it's Fortnite.
Yeah, well, now it's Fortnite, and us too, right? I mean, you keep an eye on that. What we hope, we did almost 6 billion hours of video consumed around the world in 2018, is that we can cut through the clutter. And so if we have enough fans who are saying, hey, I want to get my WWE, we think we can cut through the clutter.
What about globally? There's still international opportunities you haven't tapped yet?
Well, we're up 58% in 2018, $317 million of revenue. We're really excited about some of the emerging markets.
Okay, thank you, George. So there's George Barrios, saying that their competition is anything that people's eyeballs want to do, and even sleep, as Reed Hastings, the Netflix executive, says. They're even in competition with sleep. And I always say Vince McMahon is definitely in a competition with sleep. So that leads us to, I think, the subject of AEW itself. AEW, of course, All Elite Wrestling, a new wrestling promotion founded by Tony Khan, the son of Shad Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, a guy who's actually got more money than Vince McMahon himself. He's a billionaire he's an auto parts entrepreneur. Of course, there's no reason to think that Shad Khan is necessarily going to put billions of dollars into this wrestling company, but here's somebody who has a lot of money. This seems serious. AEW seems to be looking for TV, and maybe they'll get TV before the end of the year. We'll see. So, Double or Nothing tickets went on sale this past week on Monday, and let's see here on Thursday, February 7th, the same day as W's earnings report and conference call. AEW had a rally in Las Vegas, and Kenny Omega, kind of as some people speculated and maybe some expected, he came out and he announced that he has joined the AEW roster.
First and foremost, I must apologize. I made you guys wait an incredibly long time for me to make this announcement. And trust me, it was never my intention. It's just so strange the way the world works with legalities and all that. But rest assured, I didn't put pen to paper until this morning. But I am very happy and excited to announce that, yes, I have found my phone, and oh yes, I am now a full-time member of the AEW roster.
So Kenny Omega not just joining the AEW roster, but also his lower third noted that he is an executive vice president, which means that he's joining Cody Rhodes, each of the Young Bucks, Nick Jackson and Matt Jackson, as well as, I believe, Brandy Rhodes is the I don't know if she's an EVP, but she's definitely the chief brand officer, similar title to Stephanie McMahon in WWE. But there's a number of wrestlers here who are part of the roster, it seems, and who are also seemingly corporate employees. So maybe they'll be getting benefits like health insurance and whatnot that most wrestlers throughout the wrestling world do not get. So just a rundown of the people who are in AEW who are part of the roster. I'm sure there are different contracts involved here, but just people who seem to be involved with AEW at this point: Chris Jericho, Christopher Daniels, Chuck Taylor, Shima, Cody, Frankie Kazarian, Adam Page, Jimmy Havoc, Joey Janela, Jungle Boy, Kenny Omega, Matt Jackson, MJF, that's Maxwell Jacob Freeman, Nick Jackson, Pac, Penta L0M, that's Pentagon for those of you who remember Lucha Underground, Ray Phoenix, Sammy Guevara, Scorpio Sky, and Trent Beretta. Those are just the male wrestlers. Female wrestlers: Aja Kong, Brandy Rhodes, Dr. Britt Baker, Kylie Ray, Nyla Rose, Penelope Ford. Got Sunny Kiss listed under female wrestlers here in Wikipedia land, and Yuka Sakazaki. So I believe that Kenny Omega will have a role of maybe booking a lot of women talent here. I know Tony Khan in his talk with Chris Jericho talked about how he wants to make the women's division sort of like the cruiserweight division was for WCW, something that sets it apart from other brands of wrestling. So tickets for Double or Nothing in MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, the event sent for May 25th, were put on sale on Monday. There were a lot of pre-sale codes given out. On Wednesday, the pre-sale opened, and it sold out within minutes. Cody told Jim Ross on some form of media that there were 11,600 seats opened for the MGM Grand Arena. I know Meltzer went on Wrestling Observer Radio and basically said that the market for Double or Nothing show in the pre-sale was about 43,500 tickets. I understand the actual average number of tickets bought per user was about 2.9, and maybe just under 20,000 pre-sale codes total. About 15,000 pre-sale codes went into the pre-sale waiting room, and if you take out the people who bought 6 or more tickets, which could include a lot of scalpers, that leaves an average of about 2.3 tickets being bought per user. So you could guess demand for Double or Nothing might have been around 40,000 tickets. I mean, you could be skeptical of that, though, because urgency for tickets for ringside is not the same as they would be for upper level tickets, right? The pricing on a larger venue might be different if you had something bigger than the MGM Grand Arena. If you're doing a mid-sized stadium that maybe could hold 30 or 40,000 seats. But I think the Double or Nothing event likely could have done 20,000, maybe 25,000 if that many seats were available. So all these ticket prices, by the way, I mean, if you're looking at this on YouTube, you can see the seating chart. These are the ticket prices in the lower left corner. I can probably blow these up. Obviously, you had ticket prices that were underpriced relative to demand. You have the lowest ticket price when you include taxes and fees at about $37. The most expensive at about $211. So I think it's interesting to think about this like a lot of new media ventures like Netflix and even the W Network, which I think part of their business model is to underprice at the beginning, get people into their product, get buzz around their product, get a lot of habitual use of their product, and then over time gradually raise the price. So maybe that's something that the AEW will do with their live events as time goes on if they continue to be successful. I know ticket prices were raised slightly just before they were put on sale, maybe the day before they were put on sale. Executive vice presidents agreed to that. And I think the most important thing for AEW is that they had a hot crowd there, that it sold out. Obviously, this is a company that's going to put up a lot of money here before they ever make that money back. So if you look at the seating chart, and Cody told JR 11,600 available. If you take some of those out, say take about 1,500 of them out for comps and whatnot, and leaves you about 10,000 seats sold as actual paid attendance. And if you figure about a $60 or $65 average ticket price, that gives you a gate of somewhere around $600,000 for this event. which seems to be about in the range of all in to me. So that is Double or Nothing selling out. We did the roster update. Tony Khan on Chris Jericho's podcast talking about talent had this to say, which we will play as soon as I can get the clip going.
When a talent is pitched to you, what's the final thing that you're looking at before you say yay or nay? Because obviously I'm sure everyone's got ideas, and I'm sure there's guys coming out of the woodwork. I've had every single old school brother calling me, hey, brother, you got a spot for me over there?
We're spending a ton of money on talent. We're building a great roster, a big and diverse roster of talent. I think what's important is that everybody brings something different but additive. And the key thing is that we're not going to sign up every single talented person out there. You can't. And it was one of the problems with WCW. It was that there were too many people under contract.
So many guys.
A lot of them were super talented and super great. And it's like if you were going to cut down their contracts, you'd be making some really tough decisions because there are a lot of really great people under contract at WCW, but you just don't need that many people under contract, especially
Isn't the same thing that's going on with WWE right now, though? They're signing everybody and they can't use everybody, you know?
And for us, I think, we need to be discerning. We need to make this a sustainable business. And to me, I want to learn from mistakes people have made in the past. So let's sign up every valuable piece of talent we can that we have a plan for. But let's not sign up too many people that, we can't push everybody we like. Let's not be guilty of the same thing that we mock other people for. Let's, let's not live in a glass house here. Let's really try and focus on the people we sign and make sure we're giving them a good chance and not just sign people up for the sake of having them. Because when you get into that, that's when you really damage the business and also hurt those guys' ability.
Okay. So there's Tony Khan on talent. Obviously, a lot of unanswered questions for AEW. They're yet to run their first show. They will run their first show on May 25th. But just talking about how they're, I don't know, being mindful of the way that something like WCW was when WCW had so many wrestlers under contract. And WWE is getting into this mode where they're signing a lot of people. And I think they're aware more than ever that there's other suitors out there for talent that may take up talent that they want or may get into markets, get into areas of the business that they want to get into. We've seen that with the UK contracts. And we see this with this number of 215 superstars under exclusive contracts, ranging from multi-year guaranteed contracts with established superstars to developmental contracts with our superstars in training. I'm reading from the annual report that W just published the other week. Our superstars are highly trained and motivated independent contractors whose compensation is tied to the revenue that they help generate. We own the rights to substantially all our characters and exclusively license the rights we do not own through agreements with our superstars. So that's talking somewhat about the intellectual property related to wrestlers' names and things like that. That's what I understand that to be meaning there. But 215 wrestlers under contract with WWE, whether that's in the more traditional sense or just developmental contracts. So that does include people in developmental who are in NXT, who are in the Performance Center, undebuted, or whatever the case may be, 205 Live, NXT, whatever. So all right. So one risk factor I wanted to talk about here, WWE in their annual report goes over risk factors. I counted something like 25 of them. This is something that they publish every year in the annual report, and sometimes they add them. If new risk factors can be identified, they add them in quarterly reports. And I think there's one risk factor that isn't new. It's been there for years, I'm sure. But just reviewing these as I don't know, I should do and sometimes do each year. I thought there was one that was particularly relevant to modern times. And this is on page 11 of the annual report, and it reads, so this is, they list all these risk factors, everything that could, that they think their investors should know about, that could just conceivably, anything that could conceivably challenge or harm their business, they list here. And I'm going to talk about a couple of them. I'll talk about this one first, but it reads this: our failure to retain or continue to recruit key performers could lead to a decline in the appeal of our storylines and the popularity of our brand of entertainment, which could adversely affect our operating results. It goes on to say our success depends in large part upon our ability to recruit, train, and retain athletic performers who have the physical presence, acting ability, and charisma to portray characters in our live events, video programming, and films. We cannot guarantee that we will be able to continue to identify and train these performers. Additionally, throughout our history, performers from time to time have stopped working for us for any number of reasons, and we cannot guarantee that we will be able to retain our current performers either during the terms of their contracts or when their contracts expire. Our failure to attract and retain key performers, an increase in the costs required to attract and retain such performers, or a serious and untimely injury, or the death of, or unexpected or premature loss of, or retirement for any reason of our key performers could lead to a decline in the appeal of our storylines and the popularity of our brand of entertainment, scheduling conflicts, etc. So I think the interesting thing to think about there is there's a lot of wrestlers who are rumored to be unhappy with WWE or be unhappy with their creative direction. We saw the Revival reportedly ask for their release. WWE seems to have responded to that by making them tag team champions on Raw this most recent Monday. So I think this is something to watch for. This is something I think that if I were a W investor, I would want to be paying attention to think about why is somebody like Dean Ambrose seem to be letting his contract run out. I would speculate that it's a lack of creative fulfillment, and that there's something about being in WWE that is leaving a lot of people, a lot of talent, feeling like they are not creatively fulfilled. You can say what you want about all these wrestling fans who just complain all the time, but they don't actually turn off the program. They don't actually give WWE any negative economic effect through their supposed dissatisfaction with the product. There's nonetheless something going on in WWE, I would argue, related to that alleged dissatisfaction with the product among fans. That's also leaving some of the performers themselves unsatisfied. So I think that's something to watch for, especially now that you have another suitor for talent out there with looking like some pretty serious money behind it. Maybe a real television or media distribution deal imminent that is in All Elite Wrestling. So another risk factor that I saw being talked about this week that I want to talk about. So that was on page 11. This is on page 12. There's a risk factor that is titled, and again, this isn't like big breaking news or like anything serious that WWE is saying, wow, this is new, you have to watch out for this. This is something that WWE has been putting in its annual report for years, and it's not news, but I saw this risk factor get a post about it on Squared Circle, and then about a day later, I saw some wrestling news sites pick this up as if it was new news, just without any real context around it to explain that this isn't something that's new. This is something that's very regular, and if you'd been reading annual reports for the last few years, you would have known that. So this risk factor is titled, "The unexpected loss of the services of Vincent K. McMahon could adversely affect our ability to create popular characters and creative storylines, or could otherwise adversely affect our operating results." And basically, this is just saying that if Vince McMahon were to become incapacitated, the loss of Mr. McMahon due to unexpected retirement, disability, death, or other unexpected termination for any reason could have material adverse effect on our ability to create popular characters and create storylines, or could otherwise adversely affect our operating results. I guess it's just sort of trying to identify that, hey, Vince McMahon is really key and important to our business, and he's the head of creative. There are sentences, at least in this year, and I would guess maybe in last year too, maybe not though, because Alpha Entertainment is so new. But there is this line in here as well now talking about Alpha Entertainment, which of course is the parent company of the second coming launch of the XFL, and this sentence reads, "Mr. McMahon has established Alpha Entertainment LLC to explore investment opportunities across the sports entertainment landscapes, and Alpha Entertainment LLC plans to launch a professional football league in early 2020. It goes on to say, while he has provided the company assurances that his focus on WWE will not be diverted by these efforts, any such diversion or perception of such diversion could adversely affect our operating results and could have a material adverse effect on our stock price." And I think that's end quote. And I think that there's a perception, there would be a lot of concern among investors if there was a perception that Vince McMahon wasn't as involved with the day-to-day WWE business as he has been for decades. Although I would argue, at least creatively, that would be AEW's benefit to for if Vince were to, I don't know, spend more time with football than he did with the creative direction of Raw and SmackDown. So just wanted to note that, and to note that that's not really new news, but I've seen that out there sort of as if it is new news. In other news, The Undertaker is going to be a part of StarCast. The Undertaker removed WWE references from his social media recently, is now taking appearance fees with meet and greet appearances for $25,000 per hour. There's the flyer, if you're watching on YouTube, of The Undertaker appearing at StarCast. Of course, StarCast 2 is an event, a meet and greet type event in relation to the AEW event Double or Nothing in Las Vegas. Of course, StarCast and AEW are not one and the same. They are StarCast is not an AEW show or not an AEW event or convention or whatever it is. StarCast is something that's put on by Conrad Thompson, who is I think a real estate person and also a podcaster who's done, if you don't know, he's done a podcast with Bruce Pritchard and Tony Schiavone and probably, I think, Ric Flair. So my understanding is that Conrad Thompson is not an official worker for AEW. He has some sort of agreement or handshake deal with AEW. He is not an employee of AEW. To my knowledge, he's not been paid anything by AEW. But you can understand why I think there was a lot of reaction to this about like, oh my God, is The Undertaker not part of WWE anymore or something. This is this has a lot of I don't know, what would you say, trigger signals for some people, in that The Undertaker, who at least I think of as the loyalist of the loyal WWE people of the last 30 years, and now he's doing something that's very much not a WWE event, and that is StarCast, which is neighboring with this AEW event, which people are arguing about whether or not it's going to be a competition to WWE or not. I've attempted to listen to some podcasts this week talking about AEW, and much of what I've heard is just people talking about what people are talking about, and I sort of have to pull my hair out and go on to listen to my news and politics podcasts as the alleged socialist that I have been alleged to be by one Christopher Mukigan Harrington. In other news, and I think the last thing that I'll hit on here, and my God, I've almost gone an hour just by myself, is New Japan. So let me pull up a not just a Google spreadsheet this time, but I am going to go into the Microsoft Excel. This is serious business now. I did some Google Trends research to think about, well, let's see, Wrestle Kingdom happened again just this past January. Of course, that was Wrestle Kingdom 13. And I'm thinking, like, well, New Japan has gained in popularity among, let's say, English-speaking fans or people from mostly English-speaking countries like the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, Canada. Let's go with those for starters. Certainly over the last, let's say, 5 years, awareness and fandom of New Japan is, I think everyone would agree, has increased. So my question is, was this year a continuation of that increase, or have we seen the peak? And there's other metrics we would like to look at, but not all information in the world is available to us, unfortunately. But what I found was I went into Google Trends and I collected the Google web search data by region for the countries that I just mentioned, as well as Japan. So I collected Google web search data related to, for searches related to New Japan. What I would say is these are web searches that are not just for New Japan, not just for the string NJPW, but these are all searches that are in, I would call it, the New Japan bucket. I collected that data for the entire world, for Japan, for the United States, for the United Kingdom, Australia, and Canada. And if you've looked at Google Trends before, you know that they do not give you absolute numbers. They're not telling you how many searches are being done, but they will tell you, here's the highest point within the timeline that you're asking for. Let's call that 100. And then here's every other point, and we will compare that to the high standard of 100. So the long and short of it here is that interest in all of these English-speaking countries was higher around Wrestle Kingdom last year than it was for Wrestle Kingdom this year, except for in Japan. In Japan, it was a little bit higher this year than it was last year. So if you're looking at this on YouTube, you can see the line graphs that I've got open here. I'm going to make them a little bit bigger. So we've got Japan going from in 2000. So this is by week, by the way, which is as close as I can look at such a large timeline. So I'm going from January 2014 through January 2019. So 2014, we're at so for Japan, 2014, we're at a 44, and that steadily increases. A 91 for 2018, a 100 for 2019. Whereas worldwide, it was 82 this year, 100 the year before that, 66 the year before that. So we're at a higher point than we were at 2 years ago worldwide, but not at the high point of last year. The United States, very similar, a 58 this year, a 100 the year before that, but a 45 the year before that. The United Kingdom, a 54 this year, a 100 the year before that, a 37 the year before that. Australia, a 46 this year, a 100 the year before that, and a 42 the year before that. Canada actually lower this year than it was 2 years ago, a 49 this year, a 100 the year before that, a 58 the year before that. So I think it's just something to think about, and that maybe interest in New Japan has peaked. Who knows what New Japan will deliver throughout the rest of this year, but maybe you would you don't want to take one metric and make giant conclusions from it, but just I think it's something to keep in mind, and to see if other data comes out that would support a wider trend that would continue to suggest that interest in New Japan peaked last year and maybe is leveling back off in this year so far. So I think that's about all I had. Oh, I just wanted to mention too that so in the last 2 years, New Japan World has given in some form publicly said what the subscriber numbers were, and we did not get any information on that this year. So I've got an image here on YouTube, 90,000 after the 2018 Wrestle Kingdom, 90,000 subscribers on NJPW World. That would be up from just before the event, say like a week before that, 70,000. So 90,000 following Wrestle Kingdom last year, up from about 60,000 following Wrestle Kingdom in 2017. No number this year. Maybe you would speculate and put it in conjunction with the information that we just talked about. Maybe interest in New Japan was down from the year prior, and maybe subscribers were not up. But then again, I don't know. Harold May is the president of New Japan now. There's been some changes in management. Maybe this company is making decisions somewhat differently. Who's to say? But so something to keep in mind about New Japan. And I think that's all I had to talk about this week. Is I've talked for almost an hour by myself. Oh my God. So that's about it. You can follow Wrestlenomics at Wrestlenomics on Twitter, at Wrestlenomics on Instagram, which we almost never use. You can follow me on Twitter at Brandon Thurston. You can follow my wrestling school, Grapplers Anonymous, on Facebook, on Twitter, at Graps Anonymous, on Instagram, at Graps Anonymous. And yeah, this has been Wrestlenomics. This is a Wrestlenomics podcast where I talk about the wrestling business. If you have any questions, feel free to tweet me. Feel free to email me if you have any interesting documents to pass along. If you have any WWE stock analysis that you've come across by financial firms, wherever it may be, you can email those to wrestlenomics@gmail.com. And until next time, we'll see you later.